Ever find yourself caught between the need to relax and the push to improve yourself? It's a common predicament, really. We're always told about the importance of me time, of kicking back with a good book or a movie or just doing nothing at all. But then there's that nagging voice in the back of our heads, the one that tells us we should be learning a new skill or reading up on our profession or hitting the gym. This struggle between leisure and personal development is a fine balancing act, one that many of us grapple with daily. It's about finding harmony between relaxation and the drive to better ourselves. And guess what? It's entirely possible. Let me tell you a story about a man who managed to find this equilibrium, who mastered the art of balancing his leisure time with his personal growth. Today we're going to explore how one man found the sweet spot between leisure and self-improvement. Meet John, a regular guy with a 9-to-5 job, a love for video games, and a burning desire to learn Spanish. John's life might seem ordinary at first glance. He spends his weekdays immersed in his office work, crunching numbers, attending meetings, and handling a myriad of tasks that come with his job description. When the clock strikes 5, he's often the first one out the door, eager to head home and dive into his favorite pastime, video games. John is not just a casual gamer, he's passionate about the world of virtual reality. From the thrill of conquering challenging levels, the adrenaline rush of a close win, to the simple joy of exploring new worlds, video games offer him an escape from the monotony of daily life. But there's a catch. John has a dream that's been simmering in the back of his mind for a long time. He wants to learn Spanish. It's not just about adding another skill to his resume. It's about connecting with a culture he has always been fascinated by, about being able to converse fluently with Spanish speakers, and about opening up a new world of literature, music, and travel. Yet every evening as he sits down in front of his gaming console, he's torn. He knows he should be spending some of that time on his Spanish lessons. But the allure of the games, the excitement, the fun, it's hard to resist. John's struggle is not unique. It's a battle many of us face every day. The fight between what we enjoy doing in the moment and what we know will benefit us in the long run. John knew he needed to find a balance, but how? In our next scene, we'll delve into John's journey to strike that elusive equilibrium between his love for video games and his aspiration to learn Spanish. So stay tuned, because this could be the story of any one of us. Like many of us, John initially struggled to find the right balance. John was living a life many of us can relate to. He was juggling a demanding job, a bustling social life, and a thirst for personal development. He had a laundry list of books he wanted to read, podcasts he intended to listen to, and skills he aspired to master, yet he was constantly finding himself short on time. His leisure activities, like grabbing a beer with friends or binge-watching his favorite shows, seemed to be eating up all his free hours. John tried to solve this problem by cutting out his leisure time completely. He thought if only he could dedicate all his free hours to personal development, he could finally start ticking off those books, podcasts, and skills off his list. But this approach only left him feeling burned out and unsatisfied. In this struggle, John realized that the issue was not his leisure activities, but rather how he was managing his time. He needed to set clear boundaries, schedule his time wisely, and understand his priorities. So John started by identifying his personal development goals and prioritizing them. He understood that not everything can be achieved at once, and it was important to focus on 1 or 2 goals at a time. He then integrated these goals into his daily schedule, blocking out specific hours for personal development activities. He also set boundaries around his leisure time. Instead of letting his leisure activities eat up all his free time, he scheduled them, just like he did with his personal development activities. This way, he ensured that he was not neglecting his personal development goals while still enjoying his leisure time. Most importantly, John learned to be flexible. He understood that life is unpredictable and sometimes things don't go as planned. So he learned to adapt his schedule and goals according to his circumstances without feeling guilty or pressured. The key for John was not about cutting out his leisure time, but rather integrating his personal development goals within it. In this way, John found the perfect balance between leisure and personal development, and he was happier and more fulfilled than ever before. With the solution in mind, John set out to implement his new strategy. It's one thing to have a plan, but it's another to put it into action. John knew this, and he also knew that the road to a balanced life wouldn't be smooth. It's like driving a car down a bumpy road. You know where you want to go, but the trip there is filled with potholes, and there's always the chance of a flat tire. John's strategy was simple yet effective. He decided to dedicate 1 hour a day to learning Spanish right after dinner. This was his me time for personal development, but he also set aside time to indulge in his favorite pastime, video gaming. He would game for an hour after work, a time when he could unwind and de-stress. Challenges? Of course there were. Some days John would come home from work, exhausted, wanting nothing more than to collapse on the couch and zone out in front of his gaming console. Other days he'd feel the lure of a new game release, tempting him to skip his Spanish lessons. But he stayed the course. He reminded himself of the benefits of his strategy, that he was investing in himself by learning a new language. And he was still having fun, enjoying his leisure time, but in a more balanced way. Over time, John started noticing the benefits of his new routine. He was making progress with his Spanish, surprising himself with how much he was learning. He was also finding that his gaming experiences were more enjoyable. Why? Because they were no longer an all-consuming distraction, but a reward at the end of the day. His gaming sessions became a treat, something he looked forward to after his productive me time. And the biggest surprise? John found that he was less stressed. His life felt more balanced, more fulfilling. He was developing himself, learning new skills while still enjoying his leisure time. It was the best of both worlds. John soon found that he was not only learning Spanish, but also enjoying his video games more. John's story is not unique. Many of us struggle with the same issue. Just like John, we grapple with finding the right balance between leisure and personal development. But how did John manage to strike the perfect balance? Let's recap the main takeaways from his story. Firstly, John understood the importance of setting clear boundaries. He knew that without boundaries, leisure would seep into his personal development time and vice versa. So he established clear lines between the two. He designated specific hours for leisure and others for his personal growth. This allowed him to fully enjoy his leisure time without feeling guilty or anxious about the things he needed to work on. Secondly, scheduling was key. John didn't just mentally note his plans, he actually wrote them down. Every Sunday he'd sit down and map out his week. He'd schedule in his leisure activities, personal development tasks, and even downtime. This helped him stay organized, focused, and accountable. Thirdly, John understood his priorities. He knew that while leisure was important for his mental well-being, personal development was crucial for his growth and future success. He acknowledged that sometimes he'd have to sacrifice a bit of leisure time to meet his personal development goals, and he was okay with that. He also recognized the importance of flexibility and was willing to adjust his schedule when necessary. Lastly, John found a way to integrate personal development into his leisure time. He realized that personal development didn't have to be a chore. He began reading informative books during his leisure time, listening to educational podcasts while commuting, and even turned his hobby of cooking into a learning experience by trying out new recipes and techniques. John's journey highlights the significance of setting boundaries, scheduling, understanding priorities, and integrating personal development into leisure time. By implementing these strategies, he found a balance that not only led to his personal growth, but also allowed him to fully enjoy his leisure time. As John discovered, the right balance can lead not only to personal development, but also to a more enjoyable leisure time. Now it's your turn to find that balance. You've heard John's story, you've seen the struggle, and you've been introduced to the solution. Now it's time to apply these strategies to your own life. The challenge here, gentlemen, is not to replicate John's journey, but to carve out your own path. It's about finding your unique balance between personal development and leisure. Remember, everyone's balance will look different. You might find that you need more leisure than John, or perhaps you thrive on personal development. That's okay. It's not about a one-size-fits-all solution. It's about finding what works for you. You've got this. The tools are in your hands, and the potential is within you. It's time to step up to the plate and embrace the challenge. It's time to find your balance. Remember, the goal is not to sacrifice leisure for personal development, but to find a balance that allows for both.